I've always been somewhat of a frustrated screenwriter, in the sense that I I formulate these ideas, and they're sometimes really hard to kind of um, wrap up nicely into a very cohesive kind of project, or at least one that doesn't feel discombobulated at any given time. And I think by the time we did Are You Scared of Me 2013, Amanda and I, for Time Bomb Films, we reached a point where we weren't feeling collaborative together that much. I went on to record my debut album, Savior, and then kind of put together a sophomore album that I thought was somewhat better in some way. And the films just kind of stopped there for a minute. It just kind of became this. I really did put it down. And I want to say, after the film Death and Friendship, which starred Amanda, Chrissy Angels. Well, at first he went under the name Christian Gonzalez, rest in peace, but later went on to be Chrissy Angels. I think by that time we were sort of throwing around, kind of spitballing ideas, I guess, and I think we were. I think, well, I want to say it was Tu Wong Fu with John Leguizamo and Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes that really started to give us some idea about a script that we could kind of put together that felt, they could fit in the category of LGBTQ plus whatever, kind of under the umbrella of a movie of that caliber. Slightly less comedic, and it went on to try and do some of that. But I think in the very first one, when the script was first written, it was incomplete, like a lot of my scripts, actually. So a lot of my scripts, I always end up having this problem of sort of reaching a destination. And also Girly Boyz, when we first, the idea of it wasn't really plot driven in any way. It was these two characters kind of collide, their lives kind of intersect, and it's dark, it's a little bleak, there's a desperation involved, there's a hidden underbelly lifestyle to some characters that are reminiscent of these that I've met throughout my life. And we kind of, it was a very independent film. We had formulated Elusive Films, which is a kind of a branch off of Time Bomb Films, and it did what it needed to do, and it just kind of sat there. And then once it released in this, I want to say March or February of 2018. By that time, I hadn't really done much acting, or I think I did a cameo in one of Quint Rogers' movies. But up until that point, I hadn't really done much. And so by the time Girly Boyz was being filmed, and this was, I want to say, we started in October of 2017 and wrapped sometime around January of the following year, and then released it in March after the editing. It was a short editing process. And then I, like most of my films, wasn't really happy with it. If I can quote Christian directly, I like it, but I don't like it. And I think that's a perfect response to a movie like Girly Boyz, especially the first one. Later on, it turned into something kind of playful. The part one really did, and there was some scenes. It was like a confrontation scene. I remember we shot in the bathroom, and one of the actors, Martin, God, I forget the last name. Well, he's in the tub with the sunglasses in the preview and in the film, but that scene was drawn out into this really long confrontation scene between Cherry and Casey, and it didn't quite work. It didn't make any sense. I know it was probably supposed to imply that one of them, either my character or both, were incredibly drug addled, but it didn't work. And we went for a softer kind of more tragic feel, a little more bleak with the ending. He was attacked, I guess trying to score a John, and it went wrong. And the two are just sitting in the kitchen and the camera backs away, and then it's the ending. And for some reason, for whatever reason, that ending for me did work. But at that point, there was never any discussion to do a sequel. Um, yeah, there was no talk of that whatsoever. There were other ideas, but Girly Boyz 2 had not even been discussed. Sometime around 2019, probably towards the tail end of it, I had sent Christian a makeshift little poster of it was like a poster that it said Girly Boyz 2, and the tagline was, "It's still a pretty good picture," which is what Joe Crawford says in the montage in the first one. And he got really excited about the idea, and I had a few other friends who had seen the film, especially during lockdown in 2020, saw the film and really responded to it, and suddenly had this new birth or something. Like, people were watching it more than they had during its first, it's the first when it first came out in 2018. And then so I decided to sort of write a treatment, because at this point scripts were becoming incredibly infuriating for me. And so I went ahead and wrote an idea, and then the pandemic hits 2020. So that gets, shelved quickly. And it wasn't until August of 2020 that we felt comfortable enough to get together, masks and all, and we suddenly decided to shoot. And it was a whole new concept. And I think Girly Boyz 2 was a little more plot driven. There was a central struggle. Initially, it being Cherry's old pimp coming back to haunt, her character, and what do they do? And there's this threat, and the filming of that started off very, very smooth and creative. And like I've said before, it was a playful approach to this movie. And it was a sequel that was very unexpected, but had a lot of problems. It had script issues, actors backing out, footage being lost. We changed format in the middle of it. We went from our usual shaky kind of to something that was a little more digitized and had a smoother kind of move. And, we wanted more plush looking cinematography and imagery, and it kind of lost its way a little bit. Oh, actually, a lot of it. So much so that it got divided into two separate episodes. And so it became like a chapter 2, episode 1 and 2. And I think that confused a lot of people. I didn't understand. Is it a sequel? Is it a series? I think part of me wanted to make it a series, but I didn't know if I had the commitment to do it. I don't know if Christian had the commitment to do it, to that kind of discipline of shooting one new episode and editing one new episode every week. And so it kind of just felt like, well, we're shooting what we can when we can, and it is what it is. And it really, I think, had a more teen movie vibe to it. The soundtrack, I wanted more music in it, 80s music. I recorded my own version of Madonna's Like a Virgin, and it is one of the films that, as much as people didn't like it, the experience of it was it was incredibly fun. It was a very fun movie to make. And I tried recreating that at some point, and it just, you know. Also, there were other strenuous things happening. I was also recording my third album, which also suffered because it didn't get my full 100% attention. And but Girly Boyz 2 was sort of a diamond in the rough. Like I think it could have worked. I think it could have worked, honestly. By the time we got to the idea of a Girly Boyz 3, I think after the disappointment of part 2 and the lagging to make part 3, I think I could be wrong, but it felt like nobody gave a shit anymore. I guess Christian was starting to kind of move away from any sort of commitment to that specific project. We had one shooting night where it felt like we were on track, and then suddenly it was like everybody it was like dead silence. And whatever we did shoot just was, I felt like I was shooting a silent film. Like it just felt like it continued to lose reason. I don't know how much reason the first one even had, but if whatever attempt we did have for some sort of storyline, or just kept getting more diluted and clouded, and it just didn't work. Girly Boyz 3 did not work at all. Unfortunately, this would be Christian's final performance, and then I've been criticized for a lot of my work. I've had reviewers, I've had people that it I don't know if I'll ever remake this potential franchise or whatever I wanted to do with it. But it was an experience, and I think one continues to feel like a tragic independent film, which is at the heart is what it is. But I would love to see what this would look like, recast, real elbow grease, a real script, a real story that I think I was trying to tell and kind of failed to. I think somehow a lot of this gets lost. But it's a movie that I'll always cherish, obviously, in light of the passing of my co-star, the character of Cherry, Chrissy Angels. But, I think Girly Boyz is as good as that movie can get with what I had to work with, and the intent was always to have a good time. And I think that's how I really feel about about Girly Boyz.